Welcome back everyone to another Outer Worlds 2 build showcase, this time for the Future Soldier. I know there are a lot of people out there who wanted a more straight up, solo oriented build than the Commander build I showcased in my most recent video, and I'm hoping that this build will lead you in the right direction. For this build, I wanted something similar to my Commander build where you can complete skill checks with ease and have tons of options in dialogue, except without the reliance on teammates. This meant that this build is going to use guns, specifically electric ones. It's going to pass skill checks, give you many decisions both inside and outside of combat, and of course be able to handle very hard with ease. In comparison with my Commander build, this build is basically just more suited for solo combat. Your character will hit much harder and be more focused at their respective skills, which will be those of a future soldier, hacking and science. For those of you wanting just a smooth talking marksman build without all the fancy gadgetry, I will be releasing a new video for the Space Cowboy tomorrow. But for now, let's get back to the Future Soldier. The Future Soldier absolutely destroys automechs. It uses hacking, science, crowd control, and electricity to take down any issues both inside and outside of combat. With, of course, an emphasis on being able to talk your way out of any situation, leaving you to make your own decisions. As always, I will have a full leveling guide in the description for this build. Right off the bat, let's focus on possibly the most crucial part of any build: character creation, the foundation of your build to get you off on the right foot. Background is pretty much a flavor pick, with some minor skill checks here and there. With that being said, for this build, I think the Professor or ex-convict makes the most sense. This is a build for someone who is a soldier with a gun through and through, but also someone who is tech savvy and heavily reliant on their smarts. So if you're trying to make a good character, then I think you could justify an ex-military turned professor to make the most sense. And if you're trying to make a morally gray character, then the roleplay as an ex-convict who was a mercenary hacker thief style character, then that also makes quite a lot of sense. In this build, I also included intimidation perks in dialogue, which would even further align with using the ex-convict background. Now to the meat and potatoes, we have traits. Brilliant, as I mentioned in my first video, is what I think is generally the best trait for very hard difficulty. Basically, getting an extra level in the early game is an immense help in getting you started off right, hitting more skill checks, and being stronger in combat. I also recommend always taking a second trait. The negative traits can be overcome very easily. So with that being said, the second trait I recommend for this build is Lucky. Because this build is fairly generic, the second strongest generic trait is Lucky. Not only is an extra 5% crit chance from having Lucky just a really nice thing to have, but outside of combat, Lucky can lead to a lot of really fun moments in skill checks and lead to a more interesting playthrough. When picking two traits, we will also need a negative trait. If you are playing on a hard difficulty, the only real choice is Dumb. Dumb basically has no downsides. You never need to level up more than 7 skills in any playthrough anyway with an efficient build. In addition, Dumb is one of the most enjoyable traits to have for a fun playthrough, and good dialogue options. And if you do not want your character to actually be dumb, then you can simply skip the dialogue choices. The game does not force you to actually be dumb. Because of the dumb trait, we are going to need to pick 5 skills that we cannot level at all. These will be engineering, melee, medical, observation, and leadership. Again, there is no need for that many skills in this game. You really do not want to spread yourself thin, or you will just not pass any skill checks. 3 skills we are going to specialize in from the beginning are speech, science, and hacking. These skills are specifically chosen for the purpose of helping you in the tutorial and other early game skill checks. I made my leveling order very specifically to min-max the amount of checks you will be able to pass. Your endgame skills should end up looking something like this if you follow the guide in the description. First, we're going to talk about the absolute core skill for a complete playthrough, which is speech. Speech is straight up the strongest skill in the game, for the sole reason that it lets you bypass nearly all of the most difficult fights via peaceful resolutions. Not only will it give you that option, but it gives you many different options in dialogue to solve a multitude of quests and gives you significant damage boosts to humans, and in general from the perk Space Ranger. Space Ranger at level 30 will be providing us with a very solid 50% damage boost. From the speech tree, we will also be grabbing Intimidator and Grim Visage. These two perks are extremely powerful, basically acting as a small form of CC by fearing the enemies into running away. Both of these will proc Fear very often. Because we do not have very much defense with this build, we want to rely on the Electricity CC and Fear CC to help stop enemies from shooting back at us. These two perks also extend into Dialogue, giving you even more unique ways to play. Speaking of unique ways to play, we are going to go with Hacking, which is currently the only build I have on the channel that will use it. Hacking is a core identity to the Future Soldier, not only for roleplay reasons, but also within combat. One of the goals with this build will be to annihilate the entire existence of automechs. This build absolutely destroys automechs in every single way. Not in small part to the added 100% damage boost we are going to get from leveling the hacking ability, but also from the perks Manual Reset and Plug Puller. Manual Reset grants you with an extra 10% damage boost versus automechs, bringing our total damage to them up even further. But more interestingly, it allows you to sneak up to them and disable them. Even though we do not have the actual sneak skill, you can still find opportunities to find a stray mech and shut it down for free, in combination with the helmet of choice we will be using called the Black Hat. We will further talk about this hat in the equipment section. For now, let's get back to the perk Plug Puller. This is a real crown jewel of the build, and it basically allows you to pick the biggest and baddest automech on the battlefield and kill it before the battle even begins. Needless to say, this is pretty strong. I know that this build seems overly tuned into killing automechs, which aren't really the most common enemy type, but it also handles all other enemies with ease from its electric CC and gunplay. So with that being said, let's talk about the gun tree. With just 10 points in guns, your character is going to hit very, very hard, with an extra 100% range damage and 10% armor penetration, and the perks are going to look very familiar to anyone who watched the Commander build, because they are simply the best gun perks to get first. Let's start with the good old-fashioned Point Blank Artist, Crabble Rancher, Serendipitous Slayer, and Eden Windage combo. This is a key to get your early game started, because we're going to primarily be using a certain shotgun pistol again, well, on the first island. Point Blank Artist and Crabble Rancher really help our damage early on while we're still stuck on Paradise Island. There really isn't much more to be said about these perks, except that they all help us kill things faster by shooting them in the head, mostly when we're up close. And speaking of more damage, we will be using the combo of Deep Drums and Hail of Lead. I do not think I can ever go another gun build without using Deep Drums. Doubling your magazine sizes simply just feels way too good, especially in combination with Hail of Lead and the flaw Overprepared, which altogether make you deal a significant amount more damage from simply just continuing to shoot your weapon. The guns tree is pretty much just about giving us more damage to kill everything. And lastly, we have Science. Science is absolutely crucial to this build's success, because it will be your sole form of defense, through both your shield and electric CC. You will be extremely reliant on keeping your gadget shield up to survive and your gun pumping bullets to keep enemies CC'd from the electricity. The very first perk we are going to acquire in the game is Electrotherapist, which will make us apply Electrocute significantly faster. And another very fun fact is that it will also make weak automechs fight alongside us after they become paralyzed. I think this is not only really powerful, but also an extremely fun flavor pick for the build, allowing you to basically use drones to help you in combat, as a Future Soldier would. We will also be using the tried and true combo of Contingency Screen and Rapid Recharge to help ensure that we can pretty much permanently have our shield up. Your shield is your lifeline with this build, and it should be a rather large one with the investment we make into Science. Now that perks are over, let's do a quick run through of flaws. Shout out to this website I found called Nukes and Dragons, which has an excellent build planner if you are interested in theory crafting up your own builds. I'm going to use it to go over all the flaws that you can use to spice up your playthrough, because it's easier to just have them all on one screen. First up, as always, is bad knees. I see this as purely a positive quality of life flaw. It just helps you go faster when sneaking around and going through vents. Energy Hog is an interesting one. It gives you more upfront energy at the cost of recharge rate, which I generally think is a positive, helping you survive the early portion of fights and in combination with rapid recharge, the downsides are sort of eliminated altogether. Foot and mouth syndrome is just more XP, but if you don't like being rushed, then I wouldn't pick the perk. Technophobia is here purely for flavor. We already absolutely destroy mechs, so if you want to lean fully into some sort of roleplay that your character is scared of them, then I feel it fits appropriately. But needless to say, it would be some pretty insane overkill. Overprepared, as mentioned earlier, is an absolutely fantastic flaw to pair with Deep Drums and Hail of Lead, letting you pump out even more damage and reloading even less. And lastly is Dangerously Curious. This is an easy choice. Bypass shunts are very easy to come by, and being able to ramp up your build by getting XP faster is just always a good thing. Now we can talk quick about gadgets. As I mentioned in the science section, this build will heavily rely on the gas shield for survivability. It has no other means of survivability outside of electric and intimidation CC. You should have the shield up and going as much as humanly possible. As referenced earlier in the video, the Rattler is the best early game weapon money can buy, and I am an absolute Rattler addict. This will be my recommended weapon on nearly every single one of my builds, just simply due to the fact it is so far and away the best damage choice for Paradise Island. Its damage is absolutely king. The key is to get very close to your enemies and then rapidly hip fire it into their faces. Don't use this as a ranged option. This should be the very first thing you prioritize doing as soon as you set foot on land. I will mention that with this build, you absolutely can and probably should use the shock barrel instead of my recommended plasma barrel, due to the synergy this build has with electricity. With that being said, our second weapon choice of the shock machine gun, which is by far the second best gun in the early game, already will use shock, and you would be best not putting all your eggs into one damage basket, but I'll leave that choice up to you. I personally would probably still lean towards using the shock machine gun for mechs and humans, and then let the plasma rattler take over when facing the local wildlife. These will be the two guns you will use for the first 10 levels, as they probably will be for all of my builds. Equipment wise, there really is no valuable piece of armor or hats in the early game, allowing you to make whatever decisions you would like. I would, however, advise picking something up that provides you with damage resist. I personally prefer medium armor so that I can sprint around quickly in combat. For late armor options, as referenced earlier, we have some pretty solid choices. The Black Hat, which is acquired at the end of the second planet, allows you to hack mechs from afar and basically just outright kill them no matter their health or strength, which is not only powerful but a cool fantasy. Be warned though, this is very missable. You will need to talk to the robot shopkeeper in the middle of the space station mission at the very end of Planet 2. However, if you do miss the helmet or just want to switch things around, another great choice is the Pilferator. This will greatly increase your survivability via healing, and is generally the helmet I recommend using the most. If you want to min-max, then realistically using the Black Hat versus mechs and the Pilferator versus everything else is going to be your best choice. Also, this helmet kinda just looks really cool. For a basic armor choice, I am a really big fan of the medium armor Acquiescence, which is acquired in early Act 2. This will help further top off your energy and is just a really strong armor choice for defense. If you're ever in doubt on what armor to use on any build, you can pretty much never go wrong with Acquiescence. Now we'll jump over to the endgame weapons. Chainspark Cannon is the direct upgrade to the shock machine gun and is impossible to miss. It is acquired from the final boss on the first island and will suit you well for some time. The Autohacker 5000 is a fun SMG that you acquire from the advanced lockbox in the Vox Relay that makes mechs join your side, so you can get even more chances of drones fighting with you. It's a very valid option, but I personally really hated shooting this gun because of its general feel. The iron sights feel really bad to me, but it wouldn't hurt for you to give it a try and decide for yourself. The heavy revolver in this game is a super fun and strong weapon to use, and it can be paired with a shock barrel for maximum effect with this build. The shock assault rifle is pretty much the direct upgrade to the Chainspark Cannon and is an absolutely fantastic choice. You can even do some upgrades for it to turn it more into an SMG for a more mobile use. And lastly is my personal favorite weapon, the Compact Assault Rifle, with a shock barrel attached. This gun is an absolute laser beam of insanely high DPS. Now let's talk about the companions that work best with this build. Because we are not using leadership, that basically means that our companions are going to be utility bots that dish out CC and help us survive. For that, we basically just had to pick the companions with the strongest abilities, which means that there is no better choice than Marisol. She is by far the strongest companion in the game because she comes alongside the strongest ability. You tell her to hold something still, get infinite crits, and turn that thing into a fine mist. Alongside Marisol, I would recommend either Val or Inez. You could use some extra survivability with this build, which both Val and Inez can provide through healing. I strongly recommend avoiding Niles and Tristan on very hard difficulty unless you're using a leadership build. Niles and Tristan both operate as tanks that are quite frankly just not tanky enough to handle the damage of very hard enemies. Similarly, Aza functions much better in a leadership build where she can actually do some serious damage to enemies. With that being said, she's actually viable with this build because you can set her up to be a pretty decent stun bot with the right skills. I will be coming out with a deeper dive into companions on very hard difficulty in an upcoming video, and I will be making many more builds for Outer Worlds 2. So if you like this one, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.